Wavelength.
Just because we're doing our lectures online doesn't mean that we need to then retreat and make life, all about being alone.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide.
I think there's not enough knowledge around the severity of the long-term impacts that a concussion can give you, and it's not really educated enough.
You should be having.
The minimum job search requirements is definitely problematic, and it is up to a computer to decide whether you receive your payments each month.
This is Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. I'm your host, Maggie, and I'm here, as always, with the lovely Cass.
Hello. Before we jump in, we do need to acknowledge that we're recording Wavelength on the land of the Kaurna people and the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to their elders past and present.
We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. How's your week been, Cass?
It's been a bit crazy, but it's been good. How's yours?
Yeah, good. It's been a very busy day today, but it always is around Fresh, so always good. So let's jump into the episode. Today we are talking about the Adelaide Italian Festival and speak with Deputy Chair Vince Ciccarello and Zoe Bettison, MP Minister for Tourism and Multicultural Affairs.
Yes, and then later on, Liliana talks us through the new SA Social Housing Boost, and Kayla takes us through all the good news that has happened this week. But right now, we are talking to Taboo, a period company from right here in South Australia.
Ella, take it away.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Could you please briefly explain to us what the term period poverty means?
So period poverty is essentially the experience where someone isn't able to access affordable or dignified period products. For example, if you're living under financial stress, you might not be able to justify spending money on period products.
How does Taboo's Pad It Forward program contribute to minimising period poverty in Australia?
Taboo is a brand of period products sold in Australia. So we sell our product to the market in a typical format. Well, our mission is to eradicate period poverty. So we want to make sure everyone has access to product. And that's certainly funded through our profit model. So 100% of our profits are committed to projects that facilitate access to period products and education. But we also want to use our current sale of product as an opportunity to end period poverty. We have a Pad It Forward model where people can subscribe to our pads on behalf of someone at risk of period poverty. So we have 16 partnerships with charities and organisations in Australia that support people experiencing disadvantage. And through the Pad It Forward model, they receive as much product as they need, totally free of charge, to then pass on to their clients.
How can businesses and people in managerial roles contribute to menstrual equality in the workplace?
I love this question because it kind of sits with one of my rules of thumb, which is that wherever there is toilet paper, there should also be period products. And thankfully, we have a lot of organisations, even governments, considering their responsibility to buy period products. And kind of comparing it to toilet paper is the most effective method that I've found to communicate the logic behind it. Menstruation is a human experience that is a part of our life and our world, and none of us would exist without menstruation. It's also really cheap, so to buy period products for one staff member for a whole year will cost an organisation $5.40.
How do you think both federal and state governments can improve accessibility to period products and relief medications for those who menstruate?
Every state government in Australia, in their education department, has recognised that it's an important thing for the department to provide to students, that being period products. And the provision of period products, there was enough evidence in front of them to understand that that was a really important thing for that government to introduce. What we're really excited to do soon is to understand the broader economic impact of period poverty. I was speaking to an ICU doctor at the Royal Adelaide Hospital recently, and he saw 3 women in 1 year die from sepsis because they kept a tampon in for too long. We can understand that there is this pressure period poverty is putting on the healthcare system. So what I'm interested to do is kind of look at what the broader economic impacts are on the prevalence of period poverty.
With education reform in schools, do you think this will help to lessen the impacts of period poverty for coming generations? But how should this look on a practical level in a school?
It is a requirement in the curriculum to have some menstrual health kind of education implemented. There's other recommendations that the Commissioner for Children and Young People made in their Menstruation Matters report of 2021, things such as no white shorts in sport, no kind of security word. There were all of these trick words that you had to learn to then ask the reception for a pad. We don't want any of those words. We just want to call it as it is, have it really an honest and open conversation, and normalising that conversation, making it more accessible. Or absolutely having menstrual health education delivered to everyone, not just girls and women. There is no reason why it has to be gendered. I feel like another way to continue this conversation in a more broader, or I guess access to product space, is to talk to your boss. If you have the confidence or the relationship, we just launched a microsite called thebloodyimportantconversation.com.au. We pre-wrote a letter that can be sent to an employee from yourself, an employee, that's anonymous. Yeah, there are some fun tools out there to have that conversation.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks so much for that, Ella and Eloise. Right after the break, we hear about the Italian Festival. You're here on Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Right before the break, Ella spoke with Eloise Hall, the co-founder and managing director for Taboo.
Up next, we're talking about the Adelaide Italian Festival, which is starting on the 10th of November. To find out more, our resident Italian Marco talks with Zoe Bettison, the Minister for Tourism and Multicultural Affairs.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Minister, thank you for being on Wavelength on Fresh 92.7. It's such a busy time now for our multicultural communities in South Australia. And with the Italian Festival coming up, it sounds like the party is just about to start.
This is a curated festival which offers such a diversity of opportunities to engage. It's running from the 10th to the 19th of November, and there's absolutely something for everyone. So one of the beautiful signature events is Gravel, Gears and Grapes, which is a family-friendly affair that goes to the Barossa Valley, including local food and wine, and people are taking their bikes to ride along. So that's happening on Sunday the 5th of November. Then, of course, the opening night street party on the 10th of November. What I think people love as much as anything is looking at Autoclassica, the vehicles of Italian background, admiring their different styles and colours. That's something that's very attractive to people. What I love about this, though, is there are free events and then there's ticketed events as well. So there's actually a way of engaging. If you want to find out how to make gnocchi in a particular way, there's something for you. There's also some Italian film festival opportunity for you to engage in that wonderful aspect of theatre.
Minister, going to a larger scope, going to, say, all the multicultural groups here in South Australia, we can see there has been a very active multicultural SA in the last 50, 100 years. But I guess there's a lot of festivals these days and a lot of communities are coming alive together. How important is this for the state, really, or for the whole country?
Well, look, I think it's a great time for people to come together and celebrate. I was with the Latin community who put on their first ever festival in Victoria Square. So a focus on Latin culture. And of course, there are more than 20 countries in Latin America. And we saw people enjoy food and music and dancing and coming together and really enjoying each other's company. I think sometimes migration, as much as whether you're a skilled migrant or a humanitarian migrant or an international student, it can be very isolating. It takes a lot of work to speak another language each and every day. And sometimes I think people feel they have to become Australian. And I think one of the key things is to be unique in your own personality. Celebrate both aspects. Of course, there are going to be times when you have the dominant culture of Australia, but, you know, whether it be your language, your faith, or the food that you cook, these are things to be proud of as well, and that's what multiculturalism is about.
I think it's also about education. Like, Australian people are very much educated, not just on their culture, but everyone else's culture, and it's something that, it's like you said, it's very unique. because we get to share our knowledge, we get to share our culture, we get to share our food, and we get to learn from other cultures. So I guess also with the upcoming Multicultural Festival on the 12th of November, it's good to celebrate it all together, all in one day, which is going to be right in Victoria Square.
That's correct. We're going to have more than 70 groups performing or hosting stalls or providing activities. It's now going to be an annual event. So this is a festival that brings together everyone. Now, remember, 1 in 2 of us have a parent born overseas, or we were born overseas. So multiculturalism is us. It's who we are. And that is you. It's not something you see in many other countries. And people have come here over many different waves for many different reasons as well. But once people are here, we want them to settle here and have a good life. But we also want to share, and that's what we call interculturalism. So when people are, for example, during Ramadan, and they have their iftar dinners at night, we've always encouraged people to invite their friends, their neighbours and their work colleagues to experience that. If you're of Hindu background or Indian background, you're celebrating Deepavali or Diwali, invite people and tell them about why this is important to you. Each and every one of us has these celebrations that we have, but they're often historical. Food is often a big part of it.
Absolutely.
And the ways we celebrate is quite traditional. So invite people to enjoy it with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Minister, for being on Wavelength.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Cass. Ciao for now.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you so much for that, Zoe and Margot. Right after the break, I speak with the Deputy Chair of the Italian Festival. You're here on Wavelength.
Wavelength.
You're here on Wavelength. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the Adelaide Italian Festival. Right now, Cass talks with Vince Ciccarello, the Deputy Chair.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
I'm Vince Ciccarello, the Deputy Chair of the Adelaide Italian Festival, and it's been my pleasure to work with this great organisation for 3 years.
Over the past 4 years, the festival has grown exponentially, with only 20 events in 2020 to this year program offering over 70 events. What is your vision for the festival going ahead?
I think we want to continue to be an inclusive, open access festival, the number of events has grown as you've described exponentially. Certainly beyond our wildest dreams. We didn't think we'd be reaching 70 events in the fourth year, which is wonderful. Growth is only part of the strategy, though. We want to continue to have as wide a range of activities as possible. Of course, food and wine is central to Italian culture and a much celebrated part of what the community does. But there's so much more, and we're seeing more and more of those arts and culture type of events, music, in addition to community-related events and fashion. So that's really the aim and objective, is to not only grow the number of events, but more importantly to increase the diversity and be as inclusive as possible.
Are there any educational, informative components of the festival that help attendees learn more about Italy and its culture?
That's a great question, because while there probably isn't all that much in the way of structured educational events that one might sign up to for example, at a WEA course, every one of the events has a dimension of education and sharing about Italian culture one way or another. So I can think of, for example, completely new to me and something that I was oblivious to was that Italy has its own set of Italian superheroes. Along the lines of Marvel in the USA, and it's published by Rima Comics, and something I was completely unaware of. And so, right throughout the course of the festival, there'll be an exhibition on at the Australian City Design College in King William Street, where this phenomenon will be celebrated. So, that's a case in point. But there's also the opportunity to learn how to make regional dishes. Of course, the ultimate outcome is to enjoy that food. But more importantly, you'll be learning about what's topical and to particular regions.
Festivals often play a role in supporting local businesses and tourism. How does the Adelaide Italian Festival contribute to the local economy?
we're really fortunate to have the support not only of the State Government of South Australia through the Office of Multicultural Affairs, but as important is the number of a wide range of very prominent and successful businesses, many of which come from Italian people of Italian heritage. One has to think of Filippo food distributors, Zaganis, who distribute some of the most celebrated sports cars from Italy. We also, of course, have San Remo Pasta, a great South Australian story, Romeo's. So look, a lot of those businesses, and look, there are too many for me to name check individually, but all of them contribute to the festival, support the festival, and we'd like to think that vice versa, that in doing so, that the patrons support those businesses as well. But I'd like to think that also that the tourism dimension of the Adelaide Italian Festival is just going from strength to strength, and we're seeing more and more of the clubs in metropolitan Adelaide representing different parts of the Italian community, hosting events, drawing people in, and so while there's a commercial dimension to that, there's also that wonderful idea of cultural tourism.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide, you should be having Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for coming on the show, Vince. Right after the break, Liliana explains the new SA Social Housing Boost.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength on Fresh 92.7. Right now, Liliana talks about the new proposed SA housing bill.
Wavelength Explains on Fresh 92.7.
South Australia is set for another $135.8 million boost to social housing on the back of the Malinakis' Labor government's significant state budget housing investments. The state government is set to receive the money this year from the Commonwealth's $2 billion Social Housing Accelerator program, which has been agreed by National Cabinet. The funding is anticipated to deliver a further 300 to 400 homes on top of the Malinakis' government's existing commitment to deliver the first substantial increase to public housing in a generation by building an additional 564 public homes and stopping the sale of 580 others. The Commonwealth funding for the Social Housing Accelerator program is in addition to the $474.7 million housing package in the state budget, including abolishing stamp duty for first home buyers that purchase a new home valued up to $650,000 or vacant land valued up to $400,000 to build a new home, increasing the property value cap for the existing first homeowner grant from $575,000 to $650,000, delivering the first substantial increase to public housing in a generation, building an additional 564 public homes and stopping the sale of 580 others, fast-tracking what will be the single largest release of residential land in the state's history, set to deliver 25,000 new blocks across the north and south, the acquisition of 111 to 129 Franklin Street to deliver more than 130 affordable apartments for sale and rent, housing more than 1,000 people, delivering targeted reforms to rental laws, including banning rent bidding, and delivering new houses in regional centres for health workers, teachers and police through a new housing unit in SA. Additionally, earlier this year, the Malinakis government revealed 5 new housing projects capable of delivering hundreds of new homes at Bowden, Playford and Prospect. That would be among the first tranche of SA government projects submitted for support through the Housing Australia Future Fund. So if you've been thinking about buying your first home or getting that rental, looks like SA's got you covered.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide, you should be having Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Wavelength.
You're here on Fresh 92.7 listening to Wavelength, and it's that time of the episode. It's Heaps Good News.
Kayla, take it away.
I know there's gonna be Heaps Good News on Wavelength.
We all love live music, and supporting independent organisations is always a great cause. So a group of music venues around South Australia have banded together to create the first independent live venue alliance in the country. Known as ILVA, the alliance is made up of Adelaide CBD venues Jive, the Grace Emily Hotel and the Broadcast Bar, along with inner metro venues the Governor Highmarsh, the Wheatsheaf Hotel, Semaphore Workers Club and the Murray Delta Duke Joint on the Fleurieu Peninsula. The alliance formed to champion for locally owned venues across the state. Winning the support of the SA government, ILVA have decided to throw a huge fortnight-long festival to celebrate. Every day festival starts on October 19th and will have acts of various genres performing across the 7 venues till October 22nd. For those looking to travel anytime soon, then add Vietnam to the list. International airline Vietjet Air has announced it's coming to Adelaide next month, adding a new route to Ho Chi Minh City. The lower-cost airline's new services from Ho Chi Minh City to Adelaide will provide 5 return flights per week, with the first flight set to land in Adelaide on November 21st. And art lovers, this one's for you. For the first time since the pandemic, the Tarnathi Art Fair is available to visit in person, but for those who cannot make it, you can still browse and buy online. Held on October 20th to the 22nd, the art fair provides a place for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities where art production is a vital source of income to showcase and sell their work. All works are made and sold ethically, and all proceeds go directly to the artists and their community-run art centres. And in international Heaps Good news, this year's winner of Fat Bear Week has been announced. Grazer, who in the past has raised 8 litters of cubs and is said to never back down from a fight and considered one of the most ruthless bears at Brooks Falls, has taken the crown. Embracing single child-free life this year, Grazer won the hearts and votes of fans across the internet. Fat Bear Week is an annual event held during the month of October, commemorating the impressive seasonal preparations made by brown bears inhabiting the Katmai National Park and Preserve in Alaska as they ready themselves for their winter hibernation. I hope that's enough to get you smiling, so back to the studio.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide, you should be having Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
And that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Make sure you're subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and this episode will be up soon. That's officially it from us tonight.
Right after us, Deep with Easy G is coming into the studio. Keep it on Fresh.